This is no place for poor people. Those words were enough to send my exhausted wife into a tailspin. Shedding tears alone in the trash, my wife looked as if she might disappear at any moment. Her oil-stained work clothes were soaked in the sweet water and darkened in color. Is this how I ended up standing here? This is the end. Something inside me snapped at my wife's desperate cry. I would never forgive her for looking down on people and hurling words that take away their hope. With my hands soaked with rage, I took out my smartphone. With hands trembling with anger, I made a call. 1 call, 2 calls. The moment the other person answered the phone, a loud voice burst out of my mouth. Call the police and the executives. I'll come right away. It's an hour's drive from the town I live in, which is said to be a rural town, further into the mountains. I, Nishigaki Yuichiro, 37, come here at least once a week. Grandma, are you ready? Without ringing the intercom, I suddenly opened the sliding door at the front door and called out to her inside. This is the kind of village where people don't lock up their homes, not only during the day but also at night. Here is my family home. Although it's not really my family home, it's actually my grandparents' house. I don't have a father, and my mother left before I entered middle school. So my grandparents raised me. You grew up quickly, Yuichiro. You can leave now. Slowly, slowly. The one walking towards Kabiden is my grandmother. She's 88 years old, but I think she's relatively stable compared to her peers. My grandmother's smiling face hasn't changed at all, but her body is getting smaller every year. Grandma, be careful of the step at the entrance. Thank you. I'm sorry. My grandmother always looks so apologetic when I come over. I always take soba to and from work on one of my 2 days off a week. Sometimes I get sick on both days, and I have to use UQ and Hemikyu even more. I wonder how many years I've been living like this, and to be honest, I'm tired. There have been countless times when I've thought I didn't want to do it. But when I see this face on my grandmother, I think I have to come over again next week. That's what I think. Yuichiro. Grandpa, I wonder if Grandma will recognize me today. It's okay. Even last week, he remembered me right away after a short while. The reason I drive him here every week is to go to the nursing home where my grandfather is staying. About 2 years ago, my grandfather broke his leg and was unable to walk, so he was taken to the facility. Since then, he has shown symptoms of dementia, which have been gradually progressing. When I visited him last week, he didn't immediately recognize me or my grandmother. It was the first time something like that had happened, so my grandmother was shocked and very depressed. Dementia never gets better. I had no choice but to tell my grandmother that he was fine, as usual. When we arrived at the facility and entered my grandfather's room, it looked like he had just finished lunch. I offered him food as the caregiver left the room carrying the now shelled dishes. Grandpa's here. He looks good today. Oh, Grandma Yuichiro's here too. My grandmother looks clearly happy that my grandfather recognized us. However, the more we talked, the more disjointed our conversation became, and I couldn't help but think that my grandfather really does have dementia. My grandparents, who are a married couple, were reluctant to leave until the very end. However, in reality, it is difficult for my elderly grandmother to care for her at home alone. I persuaded the two of them, and at least to atone for my sins, I started to pick up and drop off my grandmother every week. After staying for about 2 hours, we decided to go home. Speaking of which, Yuichi-chan said that he wanted me to call her when I had time. Aunt Shizuko is my grandparents' daughter. She is my mother's older sister. She lives relatively close to my grandparents. It seems like a small matter. Grandma doesn't understand complicated matters. Okay. I'll call her when I get home. On the way home, I stop at a convenience store to buy coffee, get back in the car, and take out my smartphone. I'm calling Aunt Shizuko. I can kind of guess what she's going to say. I thought it would be better to call her when no one is around. Hello, Aunt Shizuko. Yuichiro-kun, I'm sorry to bother you when you're busy. Her voice is a little fast and high-pitched. It sounds a lot like my mother's. About my grandma. Yeah. I think it's getting to the point where it's becoming too much for her to live alone. Auntie Chizuko's story was exactly what I thought. She doesn't have any cognitive symptoms or anything, but the other day, she apparently fell asleep with a pot on the stove. And it seems like it's hard for her to do housework anymore. That's right. Oh, but she also has a helper come over. She comes upstairs once a week. The helper from upstairs and I try to go there once a week. But we can't be together 24 hours a day. I also have to take care of my father. Auntie Shizuko takes care of her husband's father in Chino. She finds time to come over to my grandmother. Auntie Shizuko is an energetic person, but she's well past the age of majority. I imagine it must be really tough for her to take care of Gifu while also worrying about her biological mother. That's right. Thank you as always, Auntie. I'll think about it. I feel bad for making you, my grandson, carry the burden of my mother. No, it's only natural since I was raised by my grandparents just like my aunt and mother. With that, he hung up the phone. I leaned my upper body against the steering wheel of my car and took a deep breath. You know what I mean. I thought about sending her to a facility. But there are currently no vacancies at the facility where my grandfather is. That would mean the two of them would go to separate facilities. I considered sending my grandmother to my house, but I agonized over the decision as I drove home. I'm home. Welcome home. I just got home too. When I entered the living room, my wife Yu was snacking on the kimpira I had prepared for dinner. Her freshly combed brown hair had a strange mark on it. She looked so cute that I couldn't help but smile, even though I was troubled. I see. Thank you for working on your day off. I didn't make as much progress as I had expected up until yesterday. It can't be helped. A is an auto mechanic. Her parents used to run the Maeda maintenance factory, which is now run by her family and a few employees. Yuri's mother passed away a few years ago, and her father last year. Her brother-in-law currently lives alone in the part of the factory where she lives. One of the reasons I can't take my grandmother in is Yuri. Even if I said I would take care of her, if I cut back on work, it would put a strain on Yuri. Also, since my grandmother is a woman, it's obvious that Yuri's cooperation will be needed at key points. I can't ask Yuri, who works together with her brother and the employees, to look after my grandmother at home. In that case, I guess I'll have to put her in a facility. Grandpa and Grandma are the same as always, and as I was feeling down, Yuri asked about my grandparents. Oh, they're the same. I see. Can I come with you next time? Of course, they'll both be happy. Yuri smiled and started getting ready to take a bath. That's right, it's about a partnership with Ichiro's company. My brother went to the bank to talk about Yushi. I see. I'm really glad your brother is interested. I work for a transportation company. It's no exaggeration to say that we handle most of the transportation in this town, from Choei bus to taxis and rental cars. I'm a general employee there. General employee sounds good, but it basically involves everything on the train, including sales and management. But my company had a big problem. It was about the mechanics on the trains. It all started 2 months ago when the company's maintenance leader asked to resign. Nishigaki-san, I'm getting old too. I'd like to move out now. The maintenance leader was over 70 years old. We only have 2 dedicated mechanics. If the leader quits, he'll be left to handle everything by himself. It's not just our company. The local transportation companies and civil engineering companies in the neighborhood were also suffering from a shortage of mechanics. There's a national chain marine goods store in this town that's fully equipped with a pit. But it's not big enough to handle maintenance on buses, trucks, or special vehicles. And yet, there are almost no young mechanics in this town. They just leave. In that case, I would have to rely on an elderly mechanic who runs a local maintenance shop, but because of his age, it would take a long time. I had no choice but to go to a distant shop or have a mechanic come to my place, which would be very expensive. So I approached Maeda Maintenance Shop, which has relatively good facilities and staff in town, and asked them to become my company's regular maintenance shop. I say partner with my company, but I mean they will look after all the large vehicles in town. As for the problem of the number of mechanics, I have asked older mechanics who are finding it difficult to work alone and mechanics from factories who are losing customers to other companies to come to Maeda Maintenance Shop after Maeda Maintenance Shop receives capital and expands its factory. So, what did Yushi say? It seems he got a good response from the current person in charge. He said he would talk to him again. That's reassuring. I hope things continue to go smoothly. I'll visit your brother again soon. It'll be tough for Yuri too, but please take care of her. Yuri and I smiled at each other. This story is full of benefits for you, my brother-in-law's factory, my company, and this town. I wonder why we haven't done this before. That's why I thought things would go well. Then one day, a big incident happened. I was about to finish my lunch break that day. You called me, which was unusual. What's wrong? Yuichiro, are you in trouble? My brother. I left the office and started the engine of my car. Our destination was a general hospital in the neighboring town, about an hour's drive away. My brother had been crushed by a car while working at the factory. I parked the car carelessly in the hospital parking lot and walked up a small pillar to the reception. In the hospital lobby, Yu, with a pale face, was sitting, shivering slightly. Yuri, Yuichiro, I'm sorry I bothered you while you were working. Thank you for coming. No, more importantly, Yu looked down. Seeing Yu's condition, the worst-case scenario came to mind. It had taken me an hour and a half to get here. In the meantime, the lift broke down and the vehicle they were working on was a van. Yeah. My brother's current condition is injuries, but he's unconscious because he got hit in the head. He won't wake up? According to you, the factory's equipment was pretty old. They were planning to replace it before it completely broke down. However, since I brought up the standard plan, they decided to replace everything after Yuji got out. Sorry. Just because I brought up the plan. Yeah. My brother and I were the ones who were in charge. I thought it would be fine because it was properly maintained and repaired. Yu is being considerate of me in saying that, but if I hadn't brought up the plan, it would have been repaired and this accident wouldn't have happened. Then the nurse called us and we went to Ji's place. My brother was wrapped in bandages, tubes were connected to his body, and his eyes wouldn't open. The sight of my stupid brother was more painful than I thought, and I almost looked away. Yu approached her brother-in-law's bed, knelt down and held his hand. Wake up, brother. Both father and mother are gone. If even brother-in-law were gone, Yu would shake her shoulders and cry quietly. All I could do was pat Yu's back. From the next day onwards, Yu started going to the maintenance shop earlier than usual and working later than usual. She must have thought that she had to work hard for her brother-in-law. I wanted to tell her not to push herself, but I thought it would be better to take it easy for now, so I said nothing. As for me, my boss was talking to me about Yoshi. Is Mr. Maeda's condition the same? Yes, it is. He hasn't regained consciousness yet. I feel bad for saying this at a time like this. Is it okay to continue with the story of the fixed form? I realized it only now after the girl told me. Yoshiji was the one who was moving forward with the story of the fixed form Yushi. If Yoshich is unconscious, I wonder what will happen from here on out. Well, I guess your sister's wife is also a co-owner. Then there's no problem. Yu has been busy since her brother-in-law's accident and we haven't really talked. I don't feel like pushing Yuri into a corner, but I have to talk to her properly about the phone. I've decided to face her properly tonight. It's 11 p.m. The door opens and Yuri comes home. Welcome home. You worked hard until late today too. I'm home. That's right. With my brother in this condition, I have to do my best. Yuri says this with a big smile, but the dark circles under her eyes tell of her exhaustion. It pains me to talk to Yuri about Yuji, but if it's impossible, then I have to report it to the company. Yuri, I'm sorry to bother you at a time like this. Do you think we can move forward with Yuji's story? Yuri's smile turns into a serious expression at my words. I'm really sorry. My brother is in a tough situation with this kind of talk, so if I have to slow down, I won't die. Huh? Yuri stares at me seriously. I've been to the bank a few times to talk about Yuji. Was the bank the Minami branch of Shima Bank? The person in charge said, your brother is fine. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. Quote. Yu said that and left the living room. Judging from Yu's behavior, Yuji's plan might not be going well. However, from what I had heard at first, it seemed that there were no problems with the amount of capital or the screening, but although I was worried, Yu was doing her best as a manager. If she needed any help, I would do whatever I could. I decided to watch quietly until Yu said something. A little while later, I received another phone call during my lunch break. The caller was from the facility that my grandfather had. I hurriedly answered the phone, thinking that something had happened to my grandfather. Yes, this is Nishigaki. Thank you for your help. This is the Yuriero Nursing Care Insurance Facility. Is this Nishigaki Yuichiro calling? Yes, it is. Something about my grandfather? I speak a little quickly because I'm feeling emotional. Oh, no, there's nothing particularly wrong. So today I called because I received a message from heaven saying that Toki wanted to talk to his grandson Yuichiro and asked him to come alone. My grandfather told me to talk to him alone. Yes, I understand. I'll come in a few days. I hung up the phone and thought. Could it be that the thing my grandfather wanted to talk to me about was my grandmother? What Aunt Chico said kept going around in my head. I don't think it would be possible for her to live alone. What would I say if my grandfather said the same thing? Even looking at Yu's current situation, there's no way I could bring my grandmother into my home. Maybe a nursing home? I can picture my grandparents being very close. I've never seen them fighting. They would always go for walks together, drinking kombucha tea and watching TV. At my mother's funeral, my grandparents held me tightly, even though it must have been hard for them. Is it okay to talk about those two anymore? If I were to have my grandmother go into a nursing home, and there were no vacancies nearby, I would have to go somewhere far from my grandfather's nursing home. Even now, at 88 years old, it would be tough for my grandmother to drive for an hour. The day came when I had to visit my grandfather without coming to a conclusion. I'm sorry you had to come. It's fine. So, what's wrong? I was scared inside, but I tried to stay calm and sat down on the round chair near my grandfather's bed. I want to transfer all the rights I currently have to you. Huh? Everything? No, the title to the land. And the thing I'm asking you to represent right now. No, Grandpa, what are you talking about? My grandfather is physically disabled and has dementia, but he doesn't have any life-threatening illnesses. But it felt like a conversation before we parted ways, and I felt really scared. I know it myself. Soon I won't recognize Grandma or you anymore. Shi-chan, I just ate breakfast, but before I knew it, lunch was sitting in front of me. I can't remember anything for several hours in a day. My grandfather was aware that he had dementia. How painful that must be. I couldn't talk to him. No, I thought I shouldn't say things so easily. As people get older, one or two things start to go wrong. It can't be helped. That's why I wanted to entrust everything to you while I can still talk to you properly. Okay. Basically, I've left it to the administrative assistant. All you have to do is press the button to say no to everything. Look, in that drawer over there. There's a business card for the administrative assistant. When I opened the drawer next to my bed, there was indeed a business card there, clearly visible. Call him here. And, yeah. Go see the instructor once. I'll tell him that I'm handing everything over to you. To the instructor. We met the other day. The instructor was my grandfather's junior. I've met him many times. If you have any problems with me, talk to the instructor. The instructor also wants to talk to you alone. Okay. I'll contact the instructor tomorrow. My grandfather let out a sigh. I thought he had probably gotten through everything he wanted to tell me, but there was one more thing. This is the main point. It seems he has something more important to talk about. I sat back down on the stool. It's about Grandma. My heart pounded. My face was drooping. I had let my guard down because Grandpa had told me something different than I had expected. Yeah. Neither Grandma nor I want you to have any hardships. If you do what you want, that's the best. Grandma and I would be happy. You know what I mean. I flinched inside, as if my heart had been found. I guess he meant that Grandma should be put in a facility too. And Grandma would probably agree with that. Tears welled up in my eyes. My heart shook at the great love from my grandparents. Grandpa reached out his hand, placed it on my lap, and pressed it with force. I placed my hand on his and returned it with the same force. The next day, I contacted the instructor and we agreed to meet in 5 days. In the meantime, I contacted the administrative officer and completed the procedures for the increase in inheritance from Grandpa while he was alive. You seemed busy as usual, so for the time being, I decided not to talk about my grandparents or the things I had inherited from Grandpa. On the day she was to meet her instructor, Yuri was getting ready to leave the house earlier than usual. Yuri, are you leaving already? It's only 4:30. Oh, I woke you up. Sorry, You feeling okay after coming home late yesterday? I'm fine. Thank you. I've been called by the bank representative today. I thought I'd do the bare minimum of work in the morning so I can have plenty of time. She's still as sullen as ever, and her complexion is very poor. I'm worried, but at the same time, I realized something. Yuri and the other employees at the factory aren't doing it all by themselves. They have to work from morning until night to be this busy. This town is small. There aren't a ton of cars to repair. Now that I think about it, I wonder why Yuri seems so busy. Of course, everyone is working hard for Big Brother. I have other things to do besides work. I see. Well, just make sure you don't hurt yourself. Hello. If there's anything I can do, just let me know. I thought he wouldn't say anything until he gave me the help sign, but after all, just waiting was harder than I imagined, so I ended up saying it. You nodded and went outside into the dimly lit, rainy weather. There's a lot to do. He's certainly the manager, so he probably has a lot to do without his brother. But I have a feeling it's not just that. It's my husband's intuition. I was so worried that I felt suffocated, but I also finished breakfast early and did the housework until the time I had agreed to meet him. I arranged to meet the instructor at a retro Showa-era coffee shop near his workplace in the next town. Yuro, are you sure this is the right place? Of course, I like the mixed sandwiches here. The place the instructor had originally specified as the meeting place was a nice, atmospheric restaurant. But I really wanted to come to this shop today, the one we visited the first time I visited the instructor. The instructor looked at me kindly as I reached for the mixed sandwich. Yuichiro, how's Tokyo doing? He's not doing so well. Sometimes he doesn't even understand me or my grandmother. The instructor frowned and took a sip of his espresso. Have you completed the procedures for the increase in the amount of money you received from Toki? Yes. I'll leave the rest to the administrative staff. It's lonely when you die. It's not just a word, it could be me tomorrow. With that, the instructor lowered his eyes. His deep smile made me imagine the life he had led, and his eyes looked at people with confidence. The instructor and Soft had a similar vibe. If you have any problems, please come to me just like you would Toki. I'll definitely help you. After chatting for a while, Sid said that and went back to work. I wondered why my grandfather had told me to go see the instructor so early. But when I met him, I understood. My grandparents were the foundation for me. I had been supporting the foundation that had supported me, and now I was the one supporting them, and without even realizing it, I had been feeling a great deal of anxiety. That's where the instructor's strength comes in. Those words made me feel very relieved. I left the coffee shop with a wry smile, thinking that my grandfather had indeed seen through my heart. The rain had gotten heavier than when I had arrived at the coffee shop. In the distance, I could hear the rice plants rustling. The trains are still running, right? I walked towards the station through the mist, where I couldn't tell if holding an umbrella would be useful or not. As expected, the train was out of service. I had no choice but to take the bus home. If I took the bus, I would miss the stop. I got on the bus, prepared to get soaked to the skin. I took a series of buses and returned to the town where I live. As I gazed at the town engulfed in heavy rain while being shaken by the bus, I saw the south side of the bank I was going to right in front of me. Come to think of it, Yu said she was going here today. As I was thinking this and staring out the window, a familiar figure came into my field of vision. It couldn't be Yu. I quickly pressed the buzzer at the back of the bus stop. The bus ran a little way and stopped at a nearby stop. I rolled off the bus and started running through the mist without an umbrella. I don't think the reason my heart was pounding so hard was because I was running. If that was Yuri, then why was it Yuri? My vision was unclear due to the rain, but there was no doubt that Yuri was standing a little ahead. I called out her name loudly, but Yuri couldn't hear me over the sound of the rain. Yuri, I called out to Yuri again in the loudest voice I could muster. Yuri slowly turned to look at me, and I arrived at Yuri's side at almost the same time. Yuri was the only one left, and I wondered what she was doing here without an umbrella. Yuri was standing alone in this room, soaking wet. Yuri's work clothes had completely changed color from being wet, and her hair was sticking to her face, making it impossible to see her expression. I opened the umbrella I was holding. Let's move for now. That's right. Maybe we can stay at the bank entrance. I don't want to go to the bank. Yuri shouted at me without moving. I swayed along with Yuri's screams, and dropped my umbrella. For a while, I listened to the approaching sound of the rain and the sound of the rain, which showed no signs of getting sick. But there was no point in the two of us getting wet here. I pulled Yuri's hand and started walking. With every step, water overflowed from my shoes, and my clothes, which had absorbed more water than they could handle, felt heavy. But it wasn't just my clothes that were heavy. Something bad had happened to you. Thinking about it made my lungs, heart, stomach, and every part of my body feel heavy. We arrived at the bus stop where I had gotten off the bus earlier. It wasn't perfect, but this place would keep me from getting hit directly by the rain. I sat you down on the bench covered in a film of water, and I squatted down in front of you. You, did something happen? No, I'm sure it did. What's wrong? You didn't say anything. She just stared at the ground with a strange expression. I wouldn't know unless you told me. Or am I that unreliable? No, that's not it. Yu raised her face and looked at me. I couldn't tell if she was crying or not from her face, which was exposed to the rain, but I could tell that she looked very distressed. I told you to tell me if anything happened. There might not be much I can do, but I want to be there for you. Yu started crying at my words. I wonder how much Yu cried. I'd like to hear more details, but the thunder is terrible and it's dangerous outside. Since the Machida maintenance factory is within walking distance, we decided to head there. When we arrived at the factory gate, an employee inside came running towards us, surprised and carrying an umbrella. The man, whom I'd met several times before, was still in his 40s and was one of the younger mechanics in this town. He's a science major and I often hear stories from Yu. The fact that he noticed us despite the poor visibility means that he must have been worried about Yu's return. You must be tired. You're soaked to the skin. If you had called, I would have come to pick you up. I'm sorry for worrying you. Yu tried her best to treat him as usual. Thanks to the rain, he didn't seem to notice that Yu was crying. We took the umbrellas and went into the office that my brother-in-law usually uses. My brother-in-law often changed here, as there were several sweatshirts and jerseys that he had already chosen. I borrowed my brother-in-law's jersey and Yu borrowed his sweatshirt. After changing our clothes, we took out a folding chair leaning against the wall and sat down. I'm sorry, Yui. What happened? Please explain it to me slowly. I asked Yu as calmly as possible. Yu clenched her fists on her knees. I was so brave. Huh? But at first, everything didn't seem to be okay. It seems that the person in charge that Oni-chan was talking to retired, and the person in charge changed around the time of my brother's accident. His name is Yanazawa. I nodded. I wanted to know what was going on as soon as possible, but it must be important for you to talk while she organizes her thoughts. I suppressed the urge to think that way. Yanazawa-san won't meet with me. I tried to make an appointment, but he said it was impossible. What's with that person in charge? At this point, anger was already bubbling up inside me. I had no choice but to go several times without an appointment. According to you, Yanazawa seems to belittle Yuri. Even when I thought I could finally talk to him, it wouldn't work without Oni-chan, and the factory would be ruined if I was alone. That's why you and your brother are in a joint venture, and you're the manager, aren't you? Of course, I've told you that many times. But you won't listen to me. The financial statements and plans I gave to the first person in charge were rejected, and the new plans for when I'll be the sole manager won't even be looked at. There's nothing I can do about it now. Tears well up in Yu's eyes again. I can feel her bitter, regretful, and helpless feelings. Just as I had predicted, Yushi's talk hadn't gone well. But today, Mr. Yone Kurozawa contacted me and asked me to come. I was so happy that he was finally going to listen to me. And yet, what did he say to me? I called him today because I wanted him to give up already. Don't say such unrealistic things like, Yushi, to all the factory workers. This isn't a place for poor people. My eyes widen. A poor person's dream. And a banker said that? It's unbelievable, but I can't believe Yu is lying. Something inside me snapped when I saw Yu crying in despair. I took my smartphone out of my business bag. I scrolled through the phone book with hands shaking with anger. Yu stared at me silently operating my smartphone with eyes that wouldn't stop crying. I couldn't get through to the first person I called. I had no choice but to call another place, and that one went through and I was connected. Thank you for calling. This is the head office of the bank. Thank you for your help. My name is Nishigaki Yuichiro. Is this Mr. Nishigaki? Yes. I think you'll understand if I tell you my name, so please call Totori and the executive for now. Yu opened her mouth in surprise, and the woman who answered the phone fell silent. Right away. Please connect Totori for now. There's no promise. Please connect quickly. Totori is currently in a meeting, so I'll call him anyway, but after a short hold tone, the call was connected again. Yes, the call has been transferred. Sorry to bother you. It's me. After hanging up the phone, I stood up. Yuri, let's go. Where are we going? What did you mean by long distance earlier? We're going to the bank. I'll explain later. I took Yuri's hand, stood up, and went outside the factory. It was raining just as hard as before. Yuri and I held umbrellas and walked quickly in the rain toward the south branch of Yuri's bank. When we got to the bank, Yuri was reluctant to go in. Hey, let's not do it after all. It'll be fine if Ichiro says something. Don't worry. I said that and headed to the counter, where I called out to a woman. Please call Mr. Yanazawa, who is in charge of Yushi. The woman looked reluctant for a moment, but then called for Yanazawa. A tall, lanky man in his 40s came out. Sorry to keep you waiting, it's Yanazawa. When Yanazawa noticed Yuri behind me, he let out a deliberately large sigh. Nishigaki-san, no matter how many times you come, it's the same. You're Mr. Yanazawa, right? Yes, but you are Yu's husband. When I said that, Yanazawa made a small right-hand movement and then burst into an exasperated laugh. Your husband came too? It's the same no matter who comes. What do you mean? What are you trying to say? Just now, the wife was alone in dirty, oily work clothes, and now the whole couple is in tracksuits and sweatpants? So what? When I replied in a low voice, Yanazawa made a sour face and gave instructions to the woman at the counter. The woman immediately went to the back of the counter and spoke to a certain man. Then the man stood up and came over. What are you talking about, Yanazawa? Manager 4, these people won't listen to me. This handsome man in the suit is the Manager 4 of the South. I thought if Manager 4 would just listen to me, it would be a complete disappointment. Nishigaki-san, if it's impossible, it's impossible. We don't have time either. It's just annoying if they sleep over. Manager 4, look at this. This isn't what it means to be a couple of like-minded people. The word poor really suits them. Ha ha ha, that's right. The 4 heavenly heads are throwing childish insults at us, but I'm calm. I know what's going to happen to them after this. Because behind them is a man with a face like a cat. Hey! What's with that just now? The man behind them asks the 4th manager and Yanazawa in a low voice that seems to resonate from the depths of the earth. Why are you here? The 2 of them turn around violently and let out a scream. Their faces, which had been laughing and looking down on people just a moment ago, quickly turned pale. Thank you for coming all the way here. The instructor. Who is that person? He looks away. It was the instructor. Yuichiro, I understand why you contacted me. The instructor says this and glares at the 2 of them. The 4th manager looks down embarrassed, and Yanazawa slowly backs away. Manager Hyodo, Yanazawa-kun, I'll talk to you later. Yuichiro-kun, come this way. The wife, myself and Yu were urged by the instructor to enter the building via the public employees road. As soon as we entered, the instructor turned to us and bowed deeply. I'm sorry that my family was rude. Mayato-san, please raise your head. Yu looked back and forth between me and the instructor, not understanding what was going on. For the time being, I had someone bring something to drink to the sofa. After making sure we were sitting down on the sofa, the instructor gave instructions using the telephone on the wall to bring us something to drink. In the awkward atmosphere where no one said anything, There was a knock on the door of the Hosetsu room and a woman came in with coffee. The coffee was handed to us and the woman left the room when the instructor spoke. "This is my first time meeting you, ma'am." "Oh, yes. Nice to meet you. My name is Yu. I work for Ino Bank. I'm the instructor." The instructor and Yu bow to each other. Yuichiro's grandfather, Tokyo, was my private tutor when I was a student. He patiently taught me how to study even though I was not very good at school. It is no exaggeration to say that I am who I am today thanks to Tokyo. Is that so? Anyway, the instructor, who had been talking to Yu cheerfully, suddenly turned into a distant expression. Yuichiro asked me to talk to Sakyu. I was wondering what was going on when he asked me to come to Minami, but I'm glad he left the meeting. I'm sorry for asking so much. Don't apologize. We are the ones who should be apologizing. But how did they end up saying such terrible things to you? I explained the whole story to the instructor. About the permanent partnership between our company and the Maeda maintenance factory. About how your brother fell unconscious. And about how they not only turned me away without even looking at the documents, but also how they used abusive language like earlier. I was suddenly excited and couldn't speak in a step-by-step manner, but Sid listened intently and seriously without interrupting. "Let's eat." Having heard the story, I reached for my coffee cup. The instructor looked at me just as I put the cup down. "Yu-san, do you have the documents that were rejected by Minami's perspective?" "Oh, I do have them, but..." Yu apologetically took the documents, which were soaked and wrinkled by the rain, out of her tote bag. "I got them wet because I thought I didn't need them anymore. It's okay. Can I see them?" Yu hesitantly handed the documents over to Totori, who smiled and accepted them kindly. Then, he took his time and slowly looked over the documents. I wonder how much time had passed. The instructor placed the documents on the table and started calling someone on his smartphone. It was me. "Maeda Maintenance Factory is here to apply for Yushi. Could you please look into the screening status at that time?" Instructor. "Yuichiro-kun. Yu-san, is it okay if I give you a little more time?" Yu looked at me and her heart sank slightly. "Yes, it's okay. I'll leave for a moment, but I'll be back, so please wait a moment." With that, the instructor left the Oyuki room. Yu and I were silent for a while. The sound of heavy rain could still be heard from outside. "Hey, Yuichiro. You should have told me that you knew Totori from Rikuno Bank. I only met him after Grandpa brought him to the facility. Today is the first time we've had a proper conversation." "Today?" "No, I went to the head office this morning to see the instructor. Just as Yu was about to ask why, there was a knock on the Oyuki room door. The door opened, and in came the instructor and a slender man wearing glasses. Sorry to keep you waiting. He was sitting next to my secretary. Oh, would you like another cup of coffee?" Yu and I shook our heads. Shito smiled slightly and sat down in front of us. "Yuichiro, Yuri, I'm thinking of calling the branch manager, Hyodo, and Yanazawa here now. Is that okay?" "Yes. Yuri would be nice too." "Yeah. I see. Thank you." Mr. Yokoi called Mr. Yokoi over and gave him some instructions with his eyes. Mr. Yokoi answered the phone and told someone to have the manager and Yanazawa come to the Oyuki room. A few minutes after Mr. Yokoi left, there was another knock on the door of the Oyuki room. It was manager Reda Yanazawa who came in. When Yanazawa looked at us, he made a hesitant face and quickly looked away. And so, it seemed that Mr. Fuji was going to start talking while the two of them were standing. First, manager Hyodo and Mr. Yanazawa. I wonder what his intention was in making such a remark to this couple today. The manager kept his head down and kept making a quirky face at Yanazawa. Yanazawa opened his mouth as if he had given up. Mr. Nishigaki of Maeda Maintenance Factory refused Yushi no matter how many times he had refused him, and it was causing problems with his work, so does he understand that this is not something that can be dismissed as a passing remark? Yes. The room was filled with silence. There was a tense atmosphere. As expected, it was the instructor who cut that string. He had Yokoi investigate. Yuji from Maeda Maintenance Shop passed the provisional screening when Zenjin was in charge. So why is Shinsen suddenly being withdrawn? Withdrawn? It's only natural for you to raise her voice. Yu never said anything about withdrawing Yuji, so Yu's face showed surprise and anger. Her eyes widened, and her clenched hands trembled slightly. That's right, the fourth store manager mumbled and winked at Yanazawa again. Yanazawa must have been irritated because he hit him. That's right, Zenjin quit without handing over his duties, and we're in charge of other things, so it's inconvenient to be suddenly given work. Ozawa said this half-heartedly, and suddenly a loud banging sound was heard on the table. Everyone jumped and their shoulders moved violently. It was the instructor who banged on the table. So that means it was troublesome to tell Kanzuki? Huh? No, I guess you could say it was troublesome. Fourth store manager. Yeah. Hey, that's annoying. But even if you look at the couple's clothes today, it doesn't look like they'll be able to pay it back. That's right. The fourth chief and Yanazawa are in a state of confusion. For some reason, Yanazawa, who had suddenly become strong-willed, suddenly looks frightened. What do you think our customers are thinking when they come to see Yuji? I'm in trouble when they give me work. Clothes. Don't be ridiculous. You guys just withdrawing customers' applications without permission for some inexplicable reason. The instructor's Saturn echoes in the Oyuki room, and the fourth chief and Yanazawa's faces are filled with fear. The instructor takes a deep breath and turns to me and you. Ryujiro-kun, it goes without saying that their punishment is yes. That's right. When I say that, the fourth chief and Yanazawa's eyes narrow. Distant view. I don't know what kind of connection you have with Nishigaki-san's husband, but I don't remember anyone who has nothing to do with him telling me that I'm being fired. When Yanazawa protests, the fourth chief nods his head so hard that it looks like he's about to fall. The instructor raised his voice even more in response to Yanazawa's lecture. It has nothing to do with you. Yuichiro. No, Mr. Nishigaki is our major shareholder. Time stopped for the fourth branch manager and Yu Yanazawa at the instructor's words. The fourth branch manager asked the instructor again in a trembling voice. Quote, major shareholder? This guy, that's right, you all know Mr. Tokyo Nishigaki well. He was a longtime shareholder of Shio. Since Mr. Nishigaki was hospitalized, Yuichiro had been attending the general meeting in his place, but this time his grandson, Yuichiro, had been given an increased position while he was still alive. That's why Yuichiro, as a major shareholder, has a say in matters such as the management of the company. I step forward in front of the fourth branch manager and Yanazawa. Manager, Mr. Yanazawa, this time it was my wife who was victimized by you, but even if it had been someone other than my wife, I would have demanded that you be fired. What you did is completely unforgivable, not just as a banker, but as a human being. The two of them collapsed at my words. The manager was muttering something, and Yanazawa was holding his head in his hands. I looked at Yuri and Sashido's books. Sid nodded vigorously. Yuri had a very calm expression on her face. The dark circles were still there, but it had been a long time since I had seen Yuri's face so happy. A few days later, Yuji's case had passed the provisional screening again, and if things continued like this, the application would probably be approved. However, Yuri's working hours, which I had thought would calm down, had not decreased at all. So today she was even later. This was the first time she hadn't come home even after midnight. Could she have collapsed? Worried, I got in the car and decided to head to the factory. When I parked the car in the factory parking lot, I could see light leaking from the office window. I hesitated about whether it was okay to just walk in, but it would be too late if something happened. I stepped into the office cautiously. Yuri. Yuri was asleep, her head slumped against the desk in the office. Oh, that's good. As I approached, I noticed a bunch of papers and envelopes lying on the desk. I picked them up casually and found that they were bills from the hospital where my brother-in-law was hospitalized. When you add them all up, it was quite a large sum. I called out to him, realizing that there was something there. Huh? Yuri. Yuri's bill. Yuri grabbed the bill from me forcefully. Yuri, this is for your brother's hospitalization and treatment fees, right? It's okay. I won't cause any trouble for you, Shiro. No, that's not what I meant. Huh? Yuri looked dumbfounded. Have you applied for engineering medical expenses for this? Engineering medical expenses? Yeah. The hospital didn't explain that. Yuri thought for a while and opened her eyes wide as if she remembered something. She might have said something. She did. There were so many things going on that I forgot. Also, doesn't your brother have life insurance? When I said that, Yuri stood up, unlocked the door to my brother-in-law's room in the factory, and went inside. I followed her and peeked inside the room from the entrance, where Yu was searching through the drawers of the sideboard. There it is, and there it is, an insurance policy? Yeah. Yu sat down on the spot, unconcerned. You should call the insurance company tomorrow. You might get some money. And don't forget to apply for the engineering medical expenses. I have to do it a few times. That's why I kept taking on repair requests. Is that why you were working so hard? You should have asked me for advice sooner. Because I didn't want to bother Yuichiro with money, I left him alone, but then I felt really tired. He must have been really tired. Yu closed her eyes while sitting and started to fall asleep again. Now, let's go home. I roughly patted Yu on the head, slapped her on the back, and left the factory. The next day, I was supposed to take a day off and go to the head office of my local bank. Apparently, today the executives will gather to decide on the punishment of manager Hyodo and Yanazawa. Yuichiro is going to the local bank today, right? Yeah. I'll see it through to the end. While Yu and I were having this conversation, Yu's smartphone rang. It's from my brother's hospital. Yuri answers the phone with a worried look on her face. Yes, it's Nishigaki. Huh? My brother, did something happen? I tried to go over to Yuri. But at that moment, my smartphone also rang. It was Aunt Shizuko calling. I have a bad feeling about this. Hello, Yuichiro. I'm sorry to bother you so early in the morning. You see, Grandma collapsed on the street and was taken to the hospital. Aunt Shizuko told me which hospital my grandmother was taken to. It seems she hasn't arrived at the hospital yet, so she doesn't know the details. I quickly called my instructor and told her that I couldn't go to the bank today. Before I knew it, Yuri had finished the phone call and was standing next to me. What happened? You can't go to the bank? Grandma collapsed. I'm going to the hospital now. I'll go too. The ghost and I jumped in the car and rushed to the hospital where my grandmother was taken. Fortunately, my grandmother had only stumbled while walking and fell on her butt. However, she had been hit hard, and even with rehabilitation, she would only be able to walk a little with a cane. We really need to decide what to do next. Aunt Shizuko sighed. Since my grandmother would be hospitalized for a while anyway, Aunt Shizuko went home saying that she would have to take care of my father-in-law. I remembered my grandfather's words. I don't want you to have any trouble. If I take my grandmother in, it will be hard not only for me but also for Yuri. My grandparents don't want that. It's best if they let her do what she wants, so what do I want to do? The faces of my grandfather, the nursery school teacher, and Yuri alternated in my mind. I couldn't decide. I was so frustrated and miserable that tears started to flow from my eyes. Yui. Yuri looked at me worriedly. You must be worried. You must be scared. No, that's not it. I screamed in my heart. How much easier it would be if I could just tell Yuri all of these feelings. But that would mean leaving the decision up to you. I don't want to do that. When I couldn't say anything, you asked me as if it were a given. So when do you want Grandma to come to our house? Huh? Well, she'll be in the hospital for a while, so it'll be after she's discharged. Our house is secondhand, but there aren't many steps. Will it be okay as it is? Oh, but maybe we should make the bathroom barrier free. The weather is nice today. I couldn't hide my surprise at how casually you talked about welcoming Grandma to our house. Yuri, do you know what you're saying? Of course. Both you and I have jobs. Besides, caring for the elderly is harder than you think. Don't you want Grandma to come to our house, Yui? You stared at me with her straight, pure eyes. It's okay to tell me how you really feel. Yu's eyes seemed to be saying that. Looking into those eyes, the words came out of my mouth naturally. I don't want Grandma to be alone. But the truth behind those words was that I wanted to take Grandma in. That was all. Hearing my true feelings, you nodded in satisfaction. Let's ask for help from a day service or a helper while we're at work. If we both feel a little tired, we can have them stay overnight at the day service. We can't be together 24 hours a day, but that's the same for any family. Thank you. Thank you. Stop it. It's not a given that families live together. Yuri knows that. That this is not a given. I don't have parents either. That's why Yuri's words warmly sank into my heart. Yuichiro, I'm sorry. I was on the phone with the instructor. Yuji's application was withdrawn without his permission. And Hyodo Shitensho and Yanazawa were dismissed from the bank for verbally abusing a customer. The instructor reported that all the procedures had been completed yesterday. Half a month had passed since then. The call that he received from the hospital that day was to say that my brother-in-law had regained consciousness. I'm grateful to Yuri for coming to my grandmother's hospital with me, even though she probably wanted to rush to my brother's side right away. And Yuji's true intentions have passed, and the expansion work on the factory has begun. It's good that the grandmother made it in time to the barrier-free construction team for the bath. Yeah. She said she felt bad about telling her grandmother, but she seemed very happy. That's good. So today's most bro is the grandmother. She goes to pick up her grandmother who is retiring, and then heads straight to her grandfather's facility. Her grandfather doesn't answer her anymore. He won't even look her in the eye. But she goes to tell him. My choice, our choice. Her grandmother happily heads to her grandfather's room, leaning on a cane. And Yuri supports her by her side. They both make it there, shedding tears. The hallway leading to her grandfather's room today looked like a path to a hopeful tomorrow. Thank you for watching. What did you think of this episode? If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and comment saying, Kasuka is the best, as it will encourage me. Also, please subscribe to the channel at the bottom of the screen now and press the notification bell icon. You will be the first to enjoy newly posted videos. There are other great videos, so please check them out if you're interested.